Bring something. Okay, we are on.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to give the committee, oh, this is Senate Finance, this is the 3rd of February, 4th of February. We just heard a couple of presentations, a lot to absorb. We heard kind of the issues that the, Legislative Study Committee found when they looked at going to an income base. We heard the proposal that we go to a purely income based, some kind of an income based surcharge, with maybe some adjustment for local school spending. And then what Jake did today with some less details in areas was what he had done in here last week, which was the governor's proposal to go that would help lower income people in lower value houses more and would in general raise the taxes on people in higher value houses. Even those, the people that I think are going to get caught are lower income in higher value property. And I see everybody on Social Security calling me tonight, but that's it. No proposal. They're going to stay with, I don't know how you do the present system because everything rises the same for non-homestead properties. They don't seem to have thought about that much at all. We found last year we have a problem with all the housing we're building, which is permanently affordable, the subsidized, especially the rentals that we're putting up for homeless people. They can't raise their rent. The rent is capped at a percentage of the income of the residents. So last year when we were talking about raising non-homestead, I got calls from my local housing agency. So we've got in public asset sample, we just wouldn't tax or do any kind of a renter tax credit, but that's also assuming that all renters are the same. There's some fairly high-end rentals out there. So I personally feel like my head is kind of spinning.
You glaze over?
Yeah. A lot, but I'm just wondering, questions, concerns. What do we need more of, less of?
I feel like the objective of what they just presented was to simplify the tax process and the credit system, but I think one of the outcomes that I'm saying is that we will draw more from those that I'm almost deeming as overhoused, meaning lower income individuals with higher value homes. I hadn't heard that that's what we were trying to accomplish. That we wanted to draw more revenue from those with still low incomes that are in more expensive houses. But
yeah,
if that's one of our policy objectives, then I think we can explore it. I don't feel like that's a big problem right now, that we have people making $50,000 with a very valuable home that they're not paying enough in taxes.
Part of the problem is they have nowhere to go.
I think that's the problem. If they were just sitting, and again, these are homes. These are places where people have invested a lot of themselves. It's where they've raised their families. It's where the family comes together. But we don't have anywhere near enough alternatives.
Effectively, and I'm not saying I support it, effectively what you're doing here is you're applying an asset that's in that property. Right? Because if somebody owns that, is in that situation, they either have bought something that is appreciated greatly, or they had an enormous chunk of change to put down to purchase. The banks don't lend people with $50,000 of income. They don't let them borrow $500,000.
I paid
Are you
$40,000 for my house.
People that parent them, they get it with their parents. they
Yeah,
get a lot
but
of-
basically that is what you're doing is you're assigning an asset test.
Yeah,
Um,
but only to one asset.
that's right.
But wait, but are you talking about the proposal that we just heard from Jake, that his
Yeah.
exemption, you think that essentially doing that is applying an asset test?
Yeah, I think you're paying more of a premium on the value of the property instead of the income.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I think I heard, and this is one of the reasons why these kinds of free flowing conversations make me uncomfortable, because we're just sort of talking based
Right.
on our memory rather than on
Yeah.
the facts in front of us, but I think I heard that I think it was Stephanie saying that there aren't as many people in Vermont in the category that you're concerned about as you think. That there aren't that many Vermonters who.
Yeah, Jake gave us a chart. I think Stephanie may have been talking about something else.
That is
Okay.
true. It's not where the bulk of people find themselves.
Right.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
if you have a high value house, you also have or have had a high value income.
Yeah, it's not the bulk. Most people live in a home that is 3 to 4 times their income. That's where most.
That would be true. And when the normal crash comes, because housing values historically have been very cyclical.
Yeah.
But when you saw the huge increase in value we've seen in the last 5
Yeah,
years.
right.
That really throws that scale off.
Yeah.
And when you add an inability to move down, so if all things were normal or equal.
Yeah.
If we've done this 6 years ago, then I think you might have a tighter correlation. Stowe has done a lot of calculating about how they are paying a larger percentage of the state's education bills based on the inflated value of their home.
Than they were 5 years ago. probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under $500,000 is not habitable. And so, but you do have actually some year-rounder people that are wealthy there. And I'm pretty sure you would find the same thing. Wyndham came up today, but
You also,
Those-
this is Stowe's wrapped up in this. This is what Burlington got wrapped up in a few years ago when you guys were in prison. You had so many properties that popped over 400,000. You went from 300 to 500. Now you're paying full boat on that 100,000 over, and you still got to pay the whole income tax. That's what's happening in communities. It's that they're
Yeah.
popping over that 400. A lot of homes are popping over.
oh.
Yeah.
Quite a few
Yeah.
and more in some areas.
Yeah.
And we have not adjusted that home value. We probably were.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
In 2018, we knocked it
Yes,
down to
we
400.
Did. The Senate has
Right in
traditionally,
this room.
I wasn't here then. The Senate has, in my day, traditionally tried to raise that value as housing values went up. And also, we haven't done a lot with the income caps either, so those can be adjusted and need to be, no matter what we do. So we could play with those, and it could be simpler, but
If you move them up, the property tax rate.
they're
goes
gonna
up.
go up.
If you move them down,
That's
the property tax rate.
Julia's balloon.
Yeah.
Because it takes more. I don't know where I'm gonna find another source of funding. I think both, I think in this, whatever we do. And, for those of us that are on health and welfare in the morning, the, hospital health insurance industry is in as bad a shape as the education industry. Everybody is in danger of going belly up, and nobody can afford to pay the present cost, never mind what it would cost to keep everybody in the black. And there are going to be some equally unpleasant decisions being made in that realm. Some of us are lucky and get to do it all day.
Well, one of the things that would be interesting in all those cases is so often the people who come in to testify are people who have, I think one could argue, a particular bias, and we don't hear both sides of the story. When I hear testimony on taxation by the Public Access Institute, I know that it is very progressive and left-leaning. And I would like to hear a balance. I would like to get, whether it be somebody like the Tax Foundation or somebody else who has a different point of view, to see if there's solutions or answers or commentary that's different than what we typically hear. Just to hear that balance, because who knows, there may be a good idea there somewhere.
We should hear all sides. We had somebody from the tax
Yeah, I know. I
foundation.
had somebody in,
He contacted
couple years ago.
me, yeah, maybe even as soon as last
we went
year,
out and
maybe
searched out,
before.
we searched out and found the person.
Yeah, okay.
I think was his name, right?
Well, this
I
guy
don't remember what his name was
contacted me, I
offhand.
think it was last year, so
This was last year, yeah.
we will have somebody,
Yeah, I'll
talk
search
to
around and see if I
about
can
that.
find
But
at least some
also,
commentary on the
do
issue.
they have a solution?
Well, that's the whole point. We don't know unless we ask them.
Yeah,
If they don't want to testify because they don't have a solution, we've solved the problem.
yeah,
Manish Bhatt.
Manish, that's the guy, yeah.
yes, that is
Correct.
the guy.
I'd love to also hear why it is that no other state does a full income tax system, including Minnesota, which is apparently the most progressive state. No one's ever been able to articulate that. Why would you be?
Well, what I've heard, I mean, I've heard people at least try to articulate it, and generally speaking, it's because you want a diversity of tax sources. And if you put everything in one basket, if you have a problem, property crash on one hand, that you can't catch up with, or for that matter, a recession in which income falls, but property value stays the same. And therefore you have a balance of revenue sources so that you don't go, into the hole even deeper. That's the rationale I've looked. for
Property
both
has
companies.
been traditionally more
Stable,
stable.
correct, and income is
Except
not.
when it isn't and went up.
Yeah.
Income is pretty stable.
It is
It's not
yeah.
as stable as property.
Well, if you look at this.
Well, I don't know,
look at,
when I hear that
COVID
Elon
times.
Musk now has access to all my tax and banking records, I get a little nervous.
I'm really intrigued by the deferral possibility. And here's the reason why. Deferral. Because, the property tax rate that we charge, the homestead property tax rate, the one that makes all the headlines. That thing is much, much higher than it needs to be. I mean, it is what is paying for that 158 million or whatever it is of the property tax credit. That's what happens. The property tax credit goes up,
Yeah.
the credit goes up, and if
You
you
have to raise more.
if you say we're not gonna give the credit, then that property tax comes down dramatically for everybody. So the question is then at that point, and I think it comes down to 40%, but so who gets damaged? The people that were getting more than 40% off the deal. Because if you can get that cost out of the education fund, then the tax rates can come down. I'm interested in looking at that
It's
Wait,
worth
are
looking
you,
at,
are you interested in looking at the deferral
deferral.
instead of the credit and
I-
instead of an exemption?
I'd say deferral and the credit, but the credit is when the property tax rate comes way down. Everybody benefits from that. And then beyond that, the
Well,
option.
do they benefit or your
But
taxes
the-
get raised to make up the difference?
Yeah,
Because you still have to have this raise the same amount of revenue.
that's right.
Right.
So you know,
So if we defer it. I mean, once you get in a regular cycle.
Yeah.
But there would, because you deferred, but then some of the properties are gonna get sold and you're gonna get the money back in.
I still have the
state.
the concern even about deferral. That if you defer the tax rate and the person has to pay the amount that's been deferred from the sale of the property, is that going to inherently increase the sale of property because people are going to want to maximize what they get out of it? Is that going to start a chain? And I would be just interested in knowing in other states where it's happened to look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Did that in fact occur?
And
I don't know.
would they do it, would it accelerate
Yeah.
the number of
Exactly.
seniors who move to Florida? Or,
What, deferral?
yeah. If I'm gonna I can pay a deferral, but I'm gonna lose the value
But I'm going to be dead. I don't really
house
care.
to my estate.
You know, I mean,
Sell my
I think that's part of
$600,000.
valid deferrals.
Yeah,
That I don't have to pay it. Somebody else, my heirs have to pay it. Somebody else has to pay it. My estate has to pay it. I don't have to pay it. And I can continue to live in my house. And that makes it very appealing, I would think.
yeah, well, it's the same with the reverse mortgage.
Yeah.
Up to the amount of equity you have in your house, but I wonder what happens toward. If the market crashes and I get a reverse mortgage on the value.
You're typically, you have to pay insurance on a reverse mortgage for that eventuality. So
Wow.
the mortgage
Okay.
grantors have protected themselves.
Do you pay?
But you're paying for the insurance now. You see,
Yeah,
you're paying for the insurance to ensure
You gotta,
their
then
future
you gotta
profit.
get mortgage insurance.
basically, yeah.
They always take care of themselves,
Yeah,
Yep.
but we don't want them to crash either.
we should just take a share of the taxes, as a benefit.
Okay, so we want to hear from the tax foundation.
Or someone like that.
I will ask. What was the thing I have?
On the deferral thing, can I?
Yeah.
I definitely support, exploring it, especially when I hear that
Yeah.
Minnesota and Massachusetts has it, and I understand it to just be voluntary, so. Alongside all of these discussions, it seems like something worth looking at. I
Yeah.
don't know, has it been approached in the Vermont legislature previously? Has this already
Yeah,
been
that's-
considered and shot
I
down?
haven't heard.
I've never heard anybody talk about it.
Okay. Not that I want people to use this program, but it seems like just an option that people could do if they don't want to leave their home and they.
Yeah.
And for older people, I think it's probably a good idea.
And you want to see a modeling, what
Yeah.
it would look like, what it would.
I'd like to see, yeah,
bring.
like, how does it work in Minnesota? Is it, I mean, I would imagine that there are qualifiers, either
Yeah.
income or age, or I'm not sure, but
There might be, but I think what you really want to know is, does it have an effect on the market? Such as increasing the price that things ultimately sell for because of people wanting to get their money out that's been quote deferred unquote. And somehow, I mean, just human nature being what it is, I would suspect that may be happening. But the numbers should give us an idea.
Okay, maybe I'll ask the realtors if they'd like to talk about this and about impact on the market in Minnesota. I'll ask Julia. If she can do any modeling with what would happen to the property tax rate if everybody deferred, if nobody deferred. I'm assuming there would, at least until we get into a regular cycle of people dying and paying off their deferrals, which is essentially what it's gonna be. It'll get paid as part of probate.
it'll go up and then it'll plateau.
Maybe we should get an accountant or somebody in to talk, an estate planner, if we could find one.
Madam Chair.
Yeah,
May I? So a couple things. My impression, and we certainly could talk to, I think having somebody from Minnesota come talk to us might be helpful, is that a lot of people don't take this option. So
no,
I don't
Jack
see it
said,
as,
Jake said that.
I don't see it as a solution. I see it as like maybe a little option over here, because you have to put a lien on your house. And for people who have lower value houses or lower value income, they are not gonna wanna take the deferral necessarily unless they really have to, because that decreases the value of their asset and also potentially makes it harder in the future. But one of the things I wanted to mention, Senator Chittenden, just looking at this table, it looks like, yeah, that table, it's about half and half, like roughly. So you're,
Half and half.
it's like half of the people are
Losing.
losing and half of them are quote unquote
Yeah.
winning.
Yeah.
So that it is a shift from higher value to lower value, but to be fair, none of these are super high value houses, and it is more of a shift to helping people with lower
But to connect
incomes.
2 points, previous one, if we did this shift, I would think that group, the losers, are gonna be more interested in the deferral program, because those are low income individuals with a lot of house, their property taxes are gonna go up, they're not making more money, assuming it's all ceteris paribus, all things being equal, their income stays the same. They will probably want to use the deferral program. So if we do something like this, it makes sense to couple those two.
Well, we also have to know what it
because-
costs.
Yep.
Because deferral means that the tax revenue that we will be using for education, we aren't gonna have.
Right.
And the more popular it is, the less money we have. So the question is, how do we make up the difference? Increase property taxes.
Eventually
Well,
make
should
it up
monetize.
in interest. Unless you have to pay the interest on the deferral.
Some,
on an
my understanding is you
ongoing
do have to pay
basis.
interest,
It's like you pay
but
interest only.
it's the principal that you're missing.
Yeah,
And the principal is, it could be, I would think could be substantial for
I
us.
would think.
So the ed fund would have to borrow against it. To make the ed fund whole. That's what, right? That's what they have to have.
And again,
Let's see how Minnesota does, man.
yeah, I mean, this is,
We borrow from ourselves.
again, other states do not have our delivery system of education. You know,
That's,
in the sense that we have all the rest of the governor's proposal. If
Oh,
we
right.
can, in fact, lower the cost of education, the per student spending that they have in Minnesota, then you're gonna lower the number of people who are
That's right.
being severely stressed. You know, we are an outlier everywhere,
In almost everything.
except in our test scores.
and yet it hasn't been made clear how we're gonna cut ed spending, where we're gonna cut it, and what the ramifications of those cuts are gonna be.
That's
So it's,
right.
I mean,
We
we
have
keep
a
saying the
long
devil's in
way
the
to go.
details, and it is. Because education is a downstream investment that pays off upstream.
But we have one of the lowest continuation rates in the country. And right now, if you don't continue on some other kind of training, they tell me that mechanics are gonna be out of a job in a few years because the new cars have 7 working parts. That, I mean, nobody is turning widgets anymore. You have a robot that turns the widget. And so you've gotta know how to program the robot, which is electronic, not with a wrench. And so the whole job market is changing, and you know, that makes our continuation rate concerning. Also, the nationally, the rate of students that have to take remedial work. So we spend all this money and they go to college and they end up doing a semester to 2 semesters of remedial work because they're not ready to start college classes. So, and that's national. I did an entire conference in Minnesota.
I don't disagree with you, but you can graduate from the tech ed program without,
Yes.
not have to go on. You can go right into the workforce, sorry,
As an LNA.
and some
Kind
other.
of thing, yeah, but auto mechanics is essentially changing. HVAC maybe isn't too well known because it's doing heat pumps now.
Just
So,
two things. So on the interfund, the concern about deferrals and holding any type of obligation. Interfund loans are legitimate ways that it could definitely be resolved, and that's done at the municipal level. So if we have money sitting somewhere, we basically borrow from ourselves, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it's fine. You can charge yourself a tax rate. To your second point, I agree. We are the finance committee, and talking about the funding model makes sense. But what I hear from voters is they want to see us also tackle the expense costs, the expenditures
right,
to lower the property
Yeah.
tax burden. And it's important to me that when we look at these things, how does this better connect voters to the votes they're taking to also control spending in concert with consolidations, flattening of the governance structure, and looking at other ways. So I think that needs to be dominant in our conversations.
yes, well, we will get an update from the education committee. And see where they're thinking. I think the last time I talked to Senator Von Gartz, they're still where we are. Which is less getting a handle on. As of last week, it was going to be this week before the governor's people were ready to do the grand reveal about their structure. Something tells me we're not going to end up with 5.
No.
It is pretty distant. We probably won't go to 12 or 14. I'm thinking 8 to 10, maybe.
You can have a lottery.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
so can I, thank you. I agree with you. We definitely need to look at spending. I don't disagree with that at all. As long as it's not at the expense of the health and well-being of kids. Like, I think that we gotta find that happy
I think
medium.
that's.
I also think we should give a second look to what the VSA came in and proposed last week. I read through the packet that they gave us, and I mean, it makes sense. It's not quite as extreme as the governor's proposal, but they are looking at what size should a district be, what size should a school be, what should class size minimums be, like all. So we have a lot of good information right now. It's just a question of being able to go through it, process it, and discuss it.
What happens? I mean, it's one thing to say, all right, you have a minimum class size of 12. I've only got 8 kids in a grade and I've only got 4 kids in the grade below that. How many grades can you combine before you're hitting educational quality?
Right.
What are you supposed to do?
Fighting in front of Senator Hardy really quick. I agree. I like the minimum size districts, and I don't think 35,000 as one of the representatives of that potential, because I can't support that. But I like what the VSA said, that there's a sweet spot. I don't know if it's 3,000 or 4,000, but it could be 10,000. Sorry about it.
That
No,
was
that's okay.
Vermont Superintendents Association for people watching.
Right. I agree with Senator Gulick that we should really be looking at that. And while I know that there's supposed to be this sort of false division between the committees, I think that whatever we come up with and propose for a tax and financing scheme, the number of districts and how those districts are cut matters, because it can impact equity, can impact whether or not we're Brigham compliant. It can impact the taxing capacity of the districts that we consider. And so they're hard to take apart. And I don't know about all of you, but I'm hearing from a lot of people in my district that are terrified and mad about the proposal for the 5 districts. And so, and even saying 8 districts is not gonna make them feel much better. So I think that we have to reconcile with what we're hearing from our constituents and the thousands of people who are heavily, literally and emotionally invested in our school system, and that we can't ignore it and just sort of plop in here's a map that we think makes sense.
No, but we also have kind of tinkered around the edges for years. And we're now into crash and burn, and people are not gonna like it. they aren't happy now when a family plan costs $44,000 a year.
I don't disagree, Madam
Yeah.
Chair. I'm just saying that there are a lot of
Oh.
people who want to be heard and want to have, make sure that whatever we come up with is in keeping with Vermont's traditions and values when it comes to public education in our state.
But do people, that are constituents contact you, are they concerned about the 5 districts, or are they concerned about the size of their individual school?
All of it.
Well,
Oh,
both. I mean, I think that, if you just look at the district that includes
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I have no
all,
question.
it includes 4 of us in this
I
committee.
can't support that.
It's
That's
just
crazy.
crazy.
But I'm just thinking about
I mean,
what
unbelievable
people
to me
call,
that would be
you
considered.
call us and say, and I'm just curious about the other
5 of
members
us.
of the committee. Are you getting calls like that from members of your district?
All I'm getting right now are from groups of teachers that want to talk to us, and we're starting those next week, I think.
Mhm.
So I haven't got any direct feedback.
Can I make a recommendation that y'all have some constituent copies? Because I had one this Saturday and there were over 40 people who showed up and we talked for 2 hours about education and education funding. That's all they wanted to talk about. They don't understand what's going on. They want clarity. They want to understand it. So many questions, so many concerns. And I am starting to get emails and calls, and because it's shrouded in mystery to a certain
Well,
extent.
it's being
Yeah, we
written
know.
as,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of angst that's being created and it's really hard to stay on top of
yeah,
it.
no, the unknown is always scary. And the fact is that we don't know the details. The governance details have not been revealed to us yet.
I won't
But
be this committee.
we are getting, again, lots of good information from the Vermont Superintendent's Association. The commission came up with a whole bunch of ideas to cut cost and spending, education spending.
That was just.
I know it was brainstorming, but there are some ideas in there that could be fleshed out. So, I feel as though, yes, a wait and see approach to see what the governor has, and we should also be doing our due diligence and maybe formulating some.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plan
Something
Bs and
accurate.
Cs and
The
Ds.
worst thing that we can think of doing is doing what we've been doing for 25 years. And that is, well, let's have a study committee this summer to look at these ideas and then not do anything about
Agreed.
the results of it.
I'm a good
We have
woman
to
of
do
action.
something.
Yeah, we are going to have a plan. We're not, but we're going to have to tell people where we're going.
Mhm.
And a lot of people won't like it. But a lot of people not only don't like their property taxes, they can't pay them. And
And it's just getting that balance in place, and that is going to be a challenge, no question about it. And there are lots of interest groups that won't like if you do anything.
but they've all
Or
contacted
much
the
of it,
commission
put it
and
that
said, you have to do
Meaningful.
something, but don't touch us. Every group out there has written us a letter.
I know we're winding down, but I did want to bring one thing to the table that I found very interesting at my meeting on Saturday, which was, we were talking about minimum class size.
Yeah.
And there was a general theme that it's really bad to have large class sizes and we need, and this one woman sat there and she spoke up. She's like, do we ever ask the kids about class sizes? Because she said, I grew up in rural Vermont and I had a class of 4 kids. And she said, I was bored. I felt left out. I wasn't pushed and challenged in the ways that I wanted to. I wanted to meet other kids there. I didn't have any. So that was also really interesting. And I think my point is, can we achieve what we're trying to achieve while not harming kids? Like that is what our North Star should be.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there is a way to do it. And being in a class of 4 is not doing anyone any favors. You have to
If you don't have
remember that.
anything in common with them,
Yeah.
they all like to play sports
Exactly.
and you like to read books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We had one class that had 3 girls and 1 boy in the grade.
Mhm.
Lucky him. And
Or not.
who did he play football with
Mhm.
or fight with? I mean.
Mhm.
No, and part least for me, part of my children's education was learning to deal with a variety of other students and a variety of teachers. I mean, that's as much of a life skill as learning
Yeah.
to add or soft skills. And so if it's the same four kids who live in the same neighborhood with, you do everything with, that's my house. I mean, it's smaller than your house. It's, you do learn negotiating skills, trying to change the channel on the TV, but it's limited. So how do we do that kind of equity? Which I know I'm not allowed to say anymore. Right?
Apparently, no,
Now it's allowed to say that.
Has the administration provided any legislative language regarding the foundation formula that they presented to us last week?
There's
To start diving into?
no.
Okay.
No.
Is that coming?
I think the education finance language is much closer to making it to a committee than the governance.
Yeah, I would too.
Will we see that, or is it gonna like go to the House?
No, the House, we'll see it if it's there. The House is just working on its own plan. We are hampered by only having afternoons. We are getting, they had 3 people in the morning, that talked about foundation formulas and what's in a good foundation formula. We've got one of those people so far.
And the others are coming the fall.
And the others are coming. So we are getting testimony on, I'm sure there's a variety with a
The question
variety.
again is where they're coming from, and
Right.
are they solely gonna present, a particular idea or point of view, or are we gonna have breadth of that discussion?
I gather that they are more like academic
So,
studies, but we will listen and then we will say, okay, what else do we want to hear? We want to hear from Wisconsin. Maybe we can see if,
Wait, you're gonna hear from Wisconsin?
not Wisconsin, Minnesota.
I can do their Wisconsin presentation.
thank you.
You, she's got
Same
that.
thing, Midwest.
Same thing, I've lived in Minnesota too, I've done education policy stuff in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
Maine, Vermont. But we will, I'll see if
I just don't like.
the Joint Fiscal and Ledge Council can
Non-
contact someone out there, see if we can find someone to talk to, probably in their education department about how does it work? And, pros, cons. See what we can find out. We could also call in CSL.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
For the Education Commission of the States, they're,
that's right.
I think they did, some testimony in that house already.
Okay, why don't we see if we can get the Education Commission of the States and NCSL and ask them to talk to us about
Education funding formulas.
funding formulas and just okay, I'm having a blank, not deterring, not playing your property.
Deferring.
Deferring, yes. Deferral programs.
And yet, you
Yes,
know what
okay,
house
good source.
committee they were in? I think they were either Ways and Means or Education. I saw it on somebody's agenda. It's Joel Moore, I believe, is the,
He's coming. Ah,
here. He's from the ECF.
okay, he's one of the. That's speaker on 12 last.
Okay, yeah, he's
He's
from
coming.
Education Commission of the States.
Okay.
And I mean, what they can give and NCSL is an overview of what other states do. Which is not, I don't know how helpful at this point, but it's at least something. And I actually can send you that. I have a draft email that I started like 2 weeks ago to send to Senator Chittenden about what's going, the Wisconsin model that you asked about.
And I had another. Yeah, we were in Woodbury last Thursday, so I didn't get to go to the presentation on Brigham. Did anyone here go?
I saw very little bit of it, that half hour.
Because recorded.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't anything I hadn't seen already, but it was fun.
Okay,
Did you go?
I did not.
I'm just wondering, well, we don't know how it's, but if your districts are economically diverse enough and you do district-wide above and beyond foundations, raising of additional dollars, would that cover Brigham?
To the foundation, yes. Once you go beyond the foundation.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
If you don't, have some sort of equalization mechanism, you could be.
You could be in trouble.
But if you have an equalization mechanism, then you're fine.
Then,
Just cap it so it can't go to a certain amount.
No, I mean that, there would be a compensatory factor for different grade levels
Yeah.
between.
we gotta find some way so that.
Yeah.
Let's face it, unless we're gonna go horizontally across the state,
And on that point,
the west coast and sections of the east coast are gonna be richer than the middle.
I'm just curious if the administration is contemplating, and this is what I want to understand. Let's say we have county districts. Would these differentials be for the whole county district, or would they allow for sub-school advisory committees to raise an additional amount for just Milton?
Well, that's what we're
That's the
going
big-
to-
No, but you couldn't do that. Within that one district, you can't treat different kids in the district. It's
Right.
Whole district.
Well,
goes for the part.
You have to have an intra-district formula for distributing the
That's right.
funds to districts, to individual schools as well. And it can include,
Schools.
factors like poverty and EL and things like that.
Yeah.
But it can't be just, oh, well, my school wants an extra teacher for.
But the more you do that,
A
the more you get
violent
into this whole
workplace.
issue of not being consistent with what you do. And the issue of the complexity that makes systems that we have right now unintelligible. People got to understand what's being done. And it's got to be a logic to it. I think that's broader than county or.
So our job is going to be it sounds like we're headed for foundation formula. There's enough momentum that Buck and Nat will be swimming upstream. We're going to have to deal with some kind of guarantee because in the past history, if anyone remembers that long, we didn't always fund it. So we're gonna have to build some trust there, and we're gonna have to deal with Brigham. Then we're gonna have to figure out how you pay for the funding formula, which will include a base amount. I believe they said
13.2.
Which is significantly less than we're doing now.
That's a debatable.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're gonna set that. But if the goal is to reduce the cost, then yeah, we're gonna have to reduce it. If all we do is change everything, which nobody's going to like, and we fail to reduce their property tax bill, we will not be back here in 2 years. If we can reduce taxes, then we might get some give on all the other stuff. But the goal is to build a sustainable system, meaning financially sustainable, that is also can provide higher quality education, because the kids in these little schools are just, especially as you get up in grades, are not, if you're a poor school, you are not getting the same opportunities that kids in a larger, richer school. You just got more kids paying for it. You got more than one kid wants to take French.
I'm seeing the vision being painted that the desired end state will be a world where we have a lot fewer school districts, where we, the state, give a base amount, large base amount with this foundation formula to that consolidated power structure to then decide how to deliver consistent education throughout that community, leaving those newly formed boards to really make the tough decisions to close some schools in certain areas through consolidation and also sharing positions and so on.
Yeah, I
That's
think-
where we're contemplating going.
I
Seems like it.
think the one thing we've agreed upon on the commission is you cannot ask locally elected school boards to make that decision. It just alienates too many
schools.
friends. Yeah. We're going to have to set up a structure like, if you can't provide this minimum class
So
size,
not the district school boards.
if that, there are no districts, well,
There's
there's,
just advisory.
there's one supervisory district or union, and I'm not clear what the difference is.
I could have sourced, they said elected positions for the 5 district model, there'd be an elected school board. I don't see.
One board in each district, so
Right.
5
School board,
boards,
from school board.
one school board.
And
With a
they'd be
number?
making those decisions on
Yeah.
consolidations, yes? Be it 5 or 10 or 8.
Not necessarily.
Well, it depends on how, it depends on what the articles of agreement are.
Right.
But I mean, it'll get made by that district, but I mean, I would just throw out there. There are other ways to reduce costs of operating schools than to close schools. Different delivery, different efficiency. I mean, closing schools is not the only option on the table.
But it will be in the mix. It will be part of the.
It's something to consider for sure.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
not clear
if-
how much
if we've got-
savings will be.
3 schools with 4 kindergartners in a school, you may say, if you can't produce 10 kids, if that's the ideal size, then you need to find a way to get that size within the district, which may mean you have to send your kindergartners 8 miles down the paved road, which has been refused in the past. Yeah. Kids are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for, and they tend to pick up their anxiety from their parents. If the parents are really anxious, the kid will pick it up.
I remember as the only time I've ever lived within a town in my entire life, I was forced to change the public school that I attended my 4th grade year. Even though the one that I had attended was the same distance as the one that I went to. 6 months into that school year, the school district came to my family, my mother, and said, we have an opening back where your kids were at school. Would you like to return to that school? I was like, no, I got a new friend group now. I'm staying where I don't need to go back there. I'm good.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are resilient.
They are.
They are.
My daughter was the first 5th grader to get sent to the middle school, to her class, because we didn't have room in those days. I wasn't sure she could find her desk, never mind finding different classrooms.
Yeah.
She did just fine.
Choose to live in the countryside, you can't expect some longer transportation to just about everything. So I'm less worried about transportation for middle school, high school. It's the elementary schools, I do feel like in our constitution, we need to keep those distributed and have elementary schools throughout.
But also larger, I mean, in Barrytown, I'll bet you in Berlin, you could spend an hour in the bus in the morning just because
Yeah.
they're big rural towns and you only got one bus and it goes up a whole lot of backwards. I mean, it's just,
We don't need, that's all the elementary schools. I think they teach those. kids
Harwood is sending a bus, well, to Warren, and the kids from, it's not Grantham, Gorge, Granville. No, this is down the gorge. Well, the Gulf. Yeah, the Gulf, Granville. My niece's kids, they bring them up to the Warren store the school bus picks up the kids from Warren, and that's the ones that are going up to Harwood.
The school bus ride is downtime for kids. That's their downtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to play with your friends.
So we're doing S30 tomorrow afternoon. It's gonna be an exciting, thrilling day.
What, now, what is this to the
No, you also got that. I'm hoping that I'm picking my husband up in the morning tomorrow and I will be here.
You're losing your committee. We're still on YouTube.
That's right. Let's go off. We are adjourned.